I'm Stephen J. Abramson, and today is April 15th, 2011. Today I have the great pleasure and honor to interview the gifted Debbie Allen, who is right here. And this is for the Archive of American Television, and we are at the Debbie Allen Dance Academy in Los Angeles, California. So we'll start at the very beginning. What was your name at birth?
Deborah K. Allen is my birth name, Deborrah. And born in Houston, Texas. And
When were you born?
I was born in Houston, Texas on January 16th, 1950.
And were you called Deborah for a long time before it became Debbie, or was it just right away the nickname? Or
I was called a lot of things. The Spiller. I had a few different nicknames. No, they always called me Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah K.
Okay.
Deborah K.
What was your father's name?
My father was a dentist, Dr. Andrew Arthur Allen.
Okay. And your mom?
My mom is Vivian Ayers Allen.
Okay. And what does she do?
My mother is a Renaissance woman. She's a poet. She's a painter. She was a concert pianist at 16. She was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for her first book of poetry in the 50s. She is the one we're trying to catch up with.
Tell me about your siblings.
I have 3 siblings. Well, actually 4. I have an older brother, Andrew Tex Allen, who's a trumpet player, musician, and composer, jazz musician. I have an older sister, Felicia Ayers Allen Rashad, who people will know her as the star of The Cosby Show. I have a baby brother, Hugh Allen, who is a banker, presently with Wells Fargo Bank. I have a half-sister, Angeline Butler, who is older than all of us. I don't know exactly how old Angeline is.
Are most of your siblings involved in the arts, except for the banker, maybe?
Everybody except for Huey. Everybody is. I think it has a lot to do with the DNA. Honestly, my mom just would see it in us and develop it, and she would fight to find opportunities for us to study and be inspired by the arts, always.
What were you interested in as a little girl?
It was dancing for me from the beginning. I think I came out dancing. And Mom just, plowed the field to get me the right classes.
How young were you when you first started?
I can remember dancing. I can remember my first costume at 4. A little white satin skirt and a triangle and some little tap shoes. I remember that.
What did you watch television when you were little?
Yes, television actually existed when I was little. It hadn't long been in existence. But actually, television had a great influence on my sense of myself. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of playing of the early musical films on television. So I was like 4 and 5 years old, cutting my teeth on the Busby Berkeley movies, Shirley Temple, the Nicholas Brothers, Gene Kelly, and Lena Horne. I had incredible images to kind of reflect myself in.
Did you have a favorite TV show?
Well, there was, when I came up, there were very few TV shows that, were the staple of the family.
Sure you put in the comments, what was your favorite TV show growing up?
Other than the Ed Sullivan Show. Growing up as a little kid, it was the Ed Sullivan Show, because that's where you saw everybody. You saw Richard Pryor, you saw the Beatles, you saw Margot Fontaine, Nureyev, you saw everyone, Sinatra, Sammy, you saw everybody on Ed Sullivan.
What traits would you say you inherited from your mother or father?
I've inherited a lot of traits from both of them. I think I have my father's personality. My father was a very gregarious dentist and loved people, loved entertaining, loved show business. I just loved life. My mother is also enjoys people, but not to the extent that my father did. My mother needs a little more quiet as a writer and as an artist. She's someone who is also very dynamic in terms of going the distance to excavate or discover that which she might not know, that she needs to know to do whatever it is that she's trying to do, or whatever her interest is, to develop her mind. So I'm like Mom in that way, because my mother now at her present age, 88 decades and change, is still vibrantly and intensely translating Spanish books, learning about the indigenous Americans, the Aztec, Mayan, all those Incan cultures. So I have that appetite of history a lot from her.
Does the writer side of her influence you, or has it influenced you?
Yes, the writer side of my mother has influenced me. The poet side. Mm-hmm. I've written many musicals and productions at the Kennedy Center. Written a lot of music with James Ingram, who I've collaborated with over the years. And as a child, growing up with poetry and rhythms, and we actually collated some of her first books when we were her production team, her kids. So poetry has always been a big part of our lives, books, because of Mama. That was back in the day when you could take the tube out of the television and it would appear to be broken. She would do that frequently to get us away from what she called the idiot box, and make us go outside in nature or read a book or something else.
When did you know you wanted to dance professionally?
I wanted to dance professionally since I was 4 years old. This was just who I am, who I've always been. I wanted to replace Shirley Temple. I was sure I could do it better. I wanted to be up on that stage when I saw Katherine Dunham dancing in stormy weather. Watching those musical films, it was so easy to project myself into what I was seeing.
When did you get your first taste of performing in front of an audience? Was it when you were a little girl doing recitals, or?
My first performances were totally family driven. I was the entertainment for the family. They could turn on the radio or turn on music and let's have a little Debbie dance. I would dance for my grandmother. I danced at anybody's birthday, just upon request.
Well, did dancing, did that take up most of your time, or did you do other things too? Were you interested in other?
Oh, I did so many other things. I was voted most versatile in my high school class, and I grew up kind of like that. I was dancing. I was in poetry, speech competitions. I tried to be on the swimming team. That didn't quite work out. I finished, but I threw up after I came in like 5 minutes later after everybody else had finished. But all through high school, I was very active in school life. I was a majorette. The star football player was my boyfriend, but I was going to dance class every day.
Yeah, it's no surprise because of what it's like you've conquered so many things in life in terms of, being able to master it or be conversant in it, that kind of thing. And you're known for that. It's not like a triple threat. It's like almost like an infinite threat, I guess.
I don't know.
Tell me about moving to Mexico City. Why did you move to Mexico City with your family?
I moved to Mexico City following my mother. Mm-hmm. We were living in Texas at a time where segregation was just the way of life. And there was just there were so many barriers for us as children, barriers for her as an artist. We couldn't go to restaurants. We could go to the park, the big amusement park, one day a year on Juneteenth. She tried to enroll me in the Houston Ballet Foundation, and they were not accepting black kids. We tried to pretend I was Mexican. They still wouldn't take me. So she actually just tired of being this incredibly gifted artists whose friends were so talented and diverse as well. I mean, she had friends that were European, East Indian, Southern white. And it was, if you were riding in the car together with somebody and you were black, they might stop you. She just got tired of that. So she packed us up in boxes because we didn't even have luggage. And we moved to Mexico.
How old were you?
I was 9, turning 10.
And you were able to enroll in the National Ballet of Mexico, is that right?
Well, what happened was we went to two different schools. I went to the Pan American Workshop, and yes,
Yeah.
I went to the Ballet Nacional and took class and performed with them, and it was incredible. It was so enlightening.
Packing up and moving your family to Mexico, how your life would turn out. Do you think it would be better or worse than what it is now?
For a young girl, for me and my sister Felicia, to be in another place, in a foreign land, a different language, where people embrace you in a way that they didn't embrace you in your own hometown. So that was very enlightening about being out in the world, why it would be important to do that.
So where did you go to high school?
By the time I came back to United States, I went to Jack Yates Senior High.
In Houston?
In Houston,
Okay.
Texas, yep.
Okay. What about college?
I went to Howard University. It was not my first choice. I had been rejected by a major performing arts school who basically told me that I would never be a dancer, that I should go into something else, and that I should reconsider my career. And so I went to Howard University really in default, if you will. It was where my sister was in school. It was my father's alma mater. And I was easily accepted there. And it was actually the best thing for me. It was the best thing for me.
What was your first professional job as a dancer?
My first professional job as a dancer where I got paid money. Well, I danced with the Corps de Ballet in Houston once I was finally accepted in the Houston Ballet Foundation at the age of 13. And they gave us an honorarium. It wasn't a professional salary, but it was an honorarium. And I was in the ballets. I was in the opera, Gypsy Baron. I was in the opera, Aida. I was the only one that didn't have to wear the Egyptian tan makeup.
So did you move to New York right out of college?
I moved right out of college, out of Howard University, and packed all my bags in a van and drove up to New York.
And what did you want to do when you got there?
I wanted to go to New York and dance. I wanted to be in the theater. I wanted to be in a company. My dream had always been Alvin Ailey. And I actually had gotten very close to it while I was in college. I went in the summertime to the North Carolina, to the New London Dance Festival, which is now the American Dance Festival in Spoleto. And I met the Alvin Ailey Company, and that's when I knew who I wanted to be and where I belonged in the world of dance. I was throwing away those toe shoes, honey, and wanted to put on some heels and a red tight dress. And everyone wanted me to come in the company, but he said I was too young. But I was killing Revelations and all the, excerpts of the choreography that we learned.
Was it a bit of a struggle when you moved up there? I mean, just getting sort of established?
Oh, it was a struggle. My sister lived in the Y, and I moved into the Y in a one-room with a bathroom down the hall situation with her. And I said, honey, we got to get out of here. So I made her get an apartment, and then we just pooled our money together and paid our rent. Sometimes we didn't eat. Sometimes we went hungry. It was hard. New York can be really tough, but, if you're
Willing to go to accomplish your dreams? Are you willing to go without a meal for a couple days? How about a bath? Are you willing to travel to foreign lands? Let me know in the comments.
you can see yourself there. If you can wait it out, you might get there.
So you were nominated for a Tony for your role in West Side Story.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How did that come to you?
Well, the entire production was incredible. I actually met the casting director on the set of Fame, the movie. Joanne, I can't say her last name, but Joanne. And she said, I was actually doing my little Spanish act, because coming out of Mexico, I spoke Spanish, and I had an accent, and I used to do bits and make people laugh. And so we were in the cafeteria somewhere, and I was making everyone laugh. And she said, do you think you would like to have a meeting with Leonard Bernstein? I was like, yeah, sure, hello. And by that time I had done a bit of television and had developed myself. So they got very excited when I auditioned, and immediately he introduced me to Joan Robbins, and I got the part, and it was incredible. I didn't grow up on West Side Story like a lot of kids, because in Texas, when that movie came out in 55, 56,
Something like that.
all the movie theaters were segregated. So I didn't see West Side Story until much later. So I was excited, though, to be working with them. I knew exactly who they were, and
You played Anita, right? And
I was Anita in West Side Story.
you got a Drama Desk Award. Is that right?
Yes, I won the Drama Desk Award.
Well, how did that feel?
That was exciting. It was exciting. It made me feel really good about my accomplishment, and made me think I might win that Tony Award, but they held it back. It's good to stay hungry. It's all good. It's all good.
When did you want to be a dancer and an actor too, or did you kind of want to do it all at that point?
I kind of wanted to do it all. I had trained at Howard University as an actress after I had been rejected by the Performing Arts School. I went to Howard University, and there I was majoring actually in classics. I was translating ancient Greek. I was one of only 2 students in the classics department class. So I was taught by Frank Snowden, Dr. Frank Snowden, who is one of the most brilliant minds in the world of antiquity and class. In fact, he wrote this incredible book called Blacks in Antiquity, and I was his student. So I was translating Homer and Aeschylus and, the great Greek writers. And then I decided, I really wanted to go into theater. Classics was going to be Latin and Greek in 6 years undergrad. And then I just started feeling I need to get back on the stage. So I transferred to the drama department, and I majored in theater arts. And there I trained as a director. I trained as an actor. I even studied lighting and set design. So Howard University gave me kind of a full package moving forward into the theater world.
What was your first television role?
Wow, my first television role, it was Good Times. I played JJ's junkie fiance. And right after that, I actually did some work on Captain Kangaroo. Captain Kangaroo was one of the funniest shows ever. I mean, it was for kids, but they did some funny sketches. And I remember playing in the circus, playing a princess, doing all these funny things. And they were kind of ready to offer me a real deal, and I was excited to do it. But then I got pulled into Hollywood.
When you were doing Good Times, were you a fan of the show?
Yeah, everybody was a fan of Good Times. It was a great show. It was family. I mean, JJ was this quirky, funny character, but the storylines were really relevant to not just the Black community, but the working class people of America. It was so relevant.
Even though she just mentioned that she was JJ's junkie fiance on Good Times, I just realized that was actually her, and I've seen that so many times. Let me know in the comments. Did you always know, or did you just find out yourself?
And I was actually visiting Ralph Carter, who was my co-star in the Broadway musical Raisin. And I was just visiting him, and I was actually sitting in the lobby waiting for my ride when Jane Murray, the casting director, walked past me and said, she looked at me and she says, "Can you act?" I said, "Yeah, I can." "Can you audition?" I said, "Really?" "Yeah." And so she brought me in her office, showed me some sides. I read the sides, and they cast me as JJ's junkie fiance on the spot. It was great.
What was the set like?
Opportunity back then was so much easier than it is now. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments.
Was it, I mean, it was, I guess, new to you.
It was totally new to me. I had never done a
TV set.
sitcom.
Yeah.
Never done a sitcom. So it was exciting. I was excited to be there. Everybody was so nice to me. They had seen Raisin, most of them. There was a bit of drama going on about how I was going to wear my hair so that it wasn't the same as the young girl that was his sister, same as her hair. And then they changed my hair. Then she changed her. I don't know. It was some drama. I remember some drama about my hair. But it was fun working with Jimmy because he was a big star. I mean, he was a big star at that time.
Jimmy Walker, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Walker.
Yeah.
And but I was not impressed. And I think he liked having somebody who was like, I would be like, "Honey, come on, say your lines, calm down. Yeah, not flirting with me for real. Let's stop it." And, I was really about the work. And so we actually became friends. And subsequent to that, he actually requested me to play opposite him in a movie called The Greatest Thing That Almost Happened.
And you were cast in Roots: The Next Generation, right?
I was cast as Nan, Alex Haley's wife. That was incredible.
Had you seen the original Roots?
Absolutely. Everyone had seen Roots, and it was such a great kind of trauma for the whole Hollywood scene. It created the miniseries because they had no faith in the show and they were going to dump it.
Did you feel that Roots was a depiction of real life, or did you know that it was made up?
They said, let's just get rid of it. And then it was the highest rated show in the history of television. Black people, slavery, America facing itself. And then when they did the sequel, Roots 2, I was so thrilled to be cast and to be working with Lloyd Richards, who was the incredible professor and director out of Yale Drama School. And it was the first time I ever went on a set and saw so many black people on the crew. I had never seen that before. There was a lighting director that was a black man. There was the sound man was a black man. I mean, it was incredible to feel that you really existed in a big way.
What do you think the legacy of Roots is?
The legacy of Roots is really the legacy of America. That's what it is. It is the story of who America is still becoming. It is the story when you experience, you are really finding out who America is, where she is. There have been two movements, is the abolition of slavery and civil rights movement. And both of those movements empowered and ignited the women's movement. It spoke to the women of America to stand up. And these things that have happened here in America are speaking to people in the Middle East right now. They're encouraged by looking at America historically, knowing that things can change. So Roots is really the story of America and who she is to become.
So around 1980, you were cast in a small role in the movie Fame. And tell me the name of the character.
Well, you know what? My character was actually supposed to be a senior student who was the nemesis for Coco. I was supposed to have a big number, and I was working in Burger King, and that all got cut. And they gave me the dress. Alan Parker was shooting so much footage. He had a 10-hour movie, and he said, "Debbie, I love you, and you'd be so great, but I'm going to have to tell you, I'm going to cut your number." I'm like, okay. And so I came off as a young teacher where I really was the senior class student who was assisting the class. And I can't even remember my name.
Well, I was wondering if it was you were Lydia in the series. Were you Lydia in the movie?
I don't think they ever said my name in the movie.
Okay. So how did you make the transition from that film to the TV series that started on NBC, I think?
Yeah, NBC.
Was that like a natural thing, or did they come back to you and say, "Hey, we really like you," or what? How did that come about?
Well, what happened was, by then I had done West Side Story. I think I had already done the movie Ragtime. I think I'd done Ragtime. And they were deciding to make Fame into a television series. And they said, would you come and play the dance teacher? We want to go younger with the dance teacher. They were clear to say the show is not going to be about you and your character. It's really going to be about the kids. And I said to them, you know what? I would love to do it if you let me do the choreography. They said, oh, please, you can have the choreography. They're like,
Really? It was that?
Yeah. They paid me $2 to do the choreography. Seriously, it was like no money. My agent kept saying, why do you want to do that? I'm like, because that's what I really love. And if I can do that, I'll do the show.
So tell me about your character, Lydia Grant.
Lydia Grant was incredible. She became a universal icon of what happens in the dance class and what dance is to people around the world. She was a young woman who, a lot of her was Debbie Allen. We only saw a little part of that, but she was a woman who never leaned on her blackness, was a black woman, but was fierce in that class with the kids. And also she was the mother. Lydia Grant was the mother of that whole series. She was the Earth Mother for everybody on that show.
You have some, there were some kind of famous lines that you said. Do you remember what those lines are?
Oh,
the gist of them?
Famous lines from Fame. You got big dreams. You want fame. Well, fame costs. And right here is where you start paying in sweat.
You nailed it.
Well, I've never not been able to say it. I mean, I'll be in the grocery store and somebody say, oh, could you say the line? I'll be in Italy somewhere. Miss Grant, say it to us, please. They love it. It's great.
Call the character's name, okay.
That's right, Miss Grant.
How was the TV show different from the movie?
It went on for 6 years. That's how it was different from the movie. It was a movie that never wrapped. It was 6 years. It was an incredible journey for all of us. For me, it developed my sensibilities, sharpened my sensibilities as a choreographer, developed me as a director, mandated that I become a producer. It was like going to film school in a way, at the same time that you were doing something that you loved, and there was always so much at stake every week to week to week to week.
Did you have input as the show continued? Did you have input about your character?
I had so much input. I had a lot of input, yeah. But you know what? I only got so far. Like, for example, I was nominated for, I can't even count how many Emmy Awards I was nominated for as Best Actress. But I was never going to win. And I would tell them, I said, Cagney and Lacey are dying of breast cancer and getting raped. And I'm talking about who's dancing the lead. So there's never going to be the degree of difficulty because they never really wanted to go home with Lydia Grant. We went home with me maybe once, Leroy once. But I didn't have so much to do with the storylines. I had all to do with what happened on the dance floor in our production numbers. It was written in the script. Bill Blaine used to write DWD, Debbie Will Determine. And so I just would give them ideas all the time about how we could expand things and things to try.
There was so much at stake from week to week. Was that how it continued? Was that
it was that way from the beginning to the end. I was there as the character Lydia Grant and also the choreographer, and soon to become the primary director, developing and really teaching those young kids. I never had a day off. On Saturdays and Sundays, they were at my house rehearsing. We only had 2 days to get those numbers together. 2 days. And there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And there was no pattern for me to follow. Bill Spencer, our cameraman, our DP, actually took me back in the editing room to show me the archives from the old MGM movies. I would write out the dance action, the lyric, how much music, and then I would write out the camera moves. And then nobody taught me how to do that. I just knew I had to communicate to everybody, this is what we're going to do. So he took me back in the editing room, and it was so much the same. It was incredible. So there was a lot at stake. I had a lot of so talented and gifted young people that were unbridled and undisciplined. In particular, my baby, Gene Anthony Ray. I was always minding him, always, till the very end with him.
Tell me a little more about the craft of choreography for television. It sounds like it just sort of came naturally to you, but what are the essential differences between something for the small screen and, let's say, stage, or even, a feature?
Well, the difference between theater and film in choreography or directing is, on the stage, lighting tells you where to look. In a movie or in television, you put the camera, you place it. You say, this is a close-up, this is a dolly shot, you're telling us all the time with the camera where we want to look. And that was something that I learned. I learned by paying attention. I was in front of the camera so much, but I was always paying attention, always. When I was in Three Girls 3, this was a big variety. This was coming, bringing variety back big time. And I will never forget them dressing me up in a Bob Mackie bejeweled harem outfit. And this camera right here in my face on a Titan crane that then just pulled all the way back as I opened my arms and unveiled and walked down the steps. And it was one big shot. It went from this extreme close-up to the massive wide shot of the entire set and the 15 men that were undulating underneath me. Oh, honey, it was fabulous. But I was paying attention the whole time. And I think my eye was also sharpened because growing up with those MGM movies as a kid, Busby Berkeley, I was paying attention. I was looking at that good old head-to-toe shot. Fred Astaire didn't do all those cuts. He and Gene Kelly, they were really doing the craft. The Nicholas Roy, there weren't a lot of cuts because they were hitting it. So I was influenced and informed by that. And certainly after having learned directing at Howard University, not trained as a film director, but just as a director for stage, the progression from choreography to directing was a natural because I really was in charge of shooting those numbers. Sometimes the directors would go home because they didn't know how to shoot dance. And I'd be, oh, honey, somebody shot a white shot. Okay, that's it. I said, oh, no, honey, we got at least 10 more setups. Look, honey, go on to your trailer. I'll fix this for you. And this is when you're really an honest artist, that you're not trying to get more money for it. You're not trying to get credit for it. You just want to get it so that it's good and it's right. And developing your eye in choreography for film is about with that camera. How are we moving the camera along? What do we want to see? So I learned through choreography a lot about a functioning master. Not a master that just sits here, but a master that moves and does this and goes in and goes out.
So how long would you have to choreograph a number and teach it before you had to shoot it?
2 days was all we had on Fame to choreograph, teach, and get a number camera ready. Wow. We had that wonderful rehearsal hall. There's a picture of me, Gene Anthony Ray, Fred Astaire, and Ginger Rogers in that rehearsal hall A. That was the same room that they rehearsed in. And when they came, they were so thrilled to come back, and they loved what we were doing on Fame. They loved us, and that room was the room.
Able to step foot in the same room as your favorite actors and actresses. Let me know in the comments, who would those people be?
Rehearsal hall A. I think it's a costume room now, unfortunately, but
So was Fame shot in New York or Los Angeles?
Fame was shot here in Los Angeles, right on the MGM lot,
Okay.
which is now the Sony lot. And we used to do maybe 2 or 3 weeks of filming in New York. I would actually film production numbers on the streets of New York that we'd cut into it, and you would feel like we were in New York.
So a typical week was how many shooting days?
There was a 7-day shoot week on Fame. 7 days. God did it in 7 days, and we were supposed to do it too.
So how did you juggle all that? Obviously, you were very busy juggling your script, your part, choreography, and then you added on directing. Did you sleep?
I think the only way I did all of these things was it was part of my, DNA as most versatile, coming out of high school, doing many things. But I gave myself to the work. So my personal life certainly sacrificed. I ended up divorced. I worked tirelessly. But I have to say that I loved it.
How many dance numbers were in a typical episode?
There would always be at least one major dance episode in Fame and maybe 2 smaller ones. And sometimes more, but always at least 2.
Were there any particularly challenging episodes or numbers you remember that stand out?
Yeah, there was a challenging episode we did where we told the story of Othello. And it was challenging because it was so interesting to me, and having grown up the way I grew up, I certainly was ready for this little battle. I will never forget this executive coming up to me saying, we're doing Othello. You're not going to actually, they were concerned about what I was going to have Gene Anthony Ray do with Laurie Singer, that he was black and that she was white. I said, you know what? I didn't pick Othello. The writers did. But if you've read Othello, you will see that, by page 2, she's already having mad sex with him, run off, and now the army is in question. I saw his pupils dilate, honey. He was like, I was like, oh my God, we're really dealing with this. Well, it's interesting because this episode won almost everybody an Emmy Award because the work was so good. Because I said, I can do all this in Desdemona's dream. I can make this Othello's dream. The song Desdemona came out of what I said the number needed to be. I said, I need to tell the whole story. And what would happen, I would sit in on the music meetings and listen to music and pick music. And no, not that. Yes, this. It was incredible. It became one of our most favorite production numbers when I took the company on the road on our European tour.
Were all the actors dancers and singers and actors, or was there a little faking it for some of them?
All of the actors in the show were not dancers, were not singers, were not actors. We were bouncing, and we were kind of putting it together as we went along. For example, Laurie Singer was a celloist, incredible musician, but she had feet like this, and she had long legs, but dancing was not really her forte. We used it a little bit, but then it became apparent, let's let her get in the music world. Erica Gimple, she came in, she was a singer and an actress, hadn't done that much dancing. And it was a real challenge. I mean, I used to be shaking her every week. Gene Anthony Ray was everything, but just unbridled and undisciplined. And I just had to pull him in. Carlo Imparato was a great actor, wonderful comedian, great singer, and was willing to jump in and dance. Lee Carreri was really Bruno for real in his real life. He was a composer. And it was like, what? there was never even any conversation about trying to have him dance. He became an actor. He became an actor in the show. And it was all of that. Doris Schwartz, Valerie, she was very talented, just could do everything. But I spent a lot of time developing and balancing their skills, for sure.
Do you see a direct link between Fame and Glee?
Oh yes, of course. There's a major link between Glee and Fame. It's high school, it's musical, it's teachers that you love to hate. You have young people that are going through their own personal challenges.
I've seen both Fame and Glee. Let me know in the comments, which show do you actually prefer?
In their personal lives. They're addressing issues from alcoholism to pregnancy. They get to at least deal with homosexuality, something we were not even allowed to touch on Fame, not even allowed.
As Fame became more popular, how did your life change? Were you recognizable pretty quickly?
My life changed in a very kind of nice way as Fame became so universally loved. I got off a bus in Israel and couldn't walk the streets. I mean, there were thousands of people just following us around. It was incredible. We went to London and we sold out Wembley Stadium. It's like, what? I went to Italy and Denzel Washington was with me and my husband, and they were like, Denzel, La Chica de Fama. Oh my God. It was really incredible. The demands on me personally became just greater. It was difficult. I was always working to bring everybody up. I mean, I ended up in the hospital with my first child, coming early because I was flying around with Fame, and I was 6.5 months pregnant. It was tough. It was a lot.
You mentioned that gay characters, it was like a taboo to kind of deal with that subject back then. What were some of the other restrictions and rules, things that you couldn't, that were sort of not allowed?
Well, we had challenges about anything that was sexual, because this is why when you say what was my influence on the stories, I said everything, but not really, because I always thought we should have had a story where Leroy fell in love with Lydia. They just were not going to let that happen. That was a natural story for him to fall in love with her. That would have been the truth. We were not allowed to deal with homosexuality, not even talk about it. There was even a question, I remember being questioned by one of the network executives, do the boys have to wear tights? And I was wondering, are we dealing with penal envy here? What they're dances, for God's sake. What are we talking about? But we were able to deal with some dynamic stories. I remember the wonderful story we did about a young prostitute that Valerie brought off the street, and that was a very powerful story. And I can even remember this production number we did, Life is a Celebration, that she witnessed that and it kind of changed her life. But we're not allowed to go very deep.
Were you ever able to sneak in some issues kind of right under their noses?
Well, I think one of the most dynamic stories we ever did was the 60s episode, where we did an episode that dealt with war and young people involved in war and protests. And Miss Sherwood, our English teacher, was going to actually have to quit because she had kind of initiated us doing a show about it, and it was creating protests. At the same time, this very charismatic, sexy, I want to say army, I don't think, he was general or what he was, but he implemented an ROTC program into our performing arts school. And then all of a sudden the boys latched onto it and they started feeling themselves. But then when it came time to pick up a gun, that's when they started going, you know what, this was fun, but now, so we did an homage. We did I picked Hair because Hair was actually the first Broadway musical I ever did see. And I never forgot it. And so we did a whole homage to
First Broadway musical that you've ever saw? Me personally, it was The Nutcracker.
what was happening with the Vietnam War and the people that were lost. And to show a kid dead was pretty powerful stuff.
Did you start directing first season?
No, I started directing second season.
And how did it come about? For you, was it a natural progression? Did you ask? Did they offer?
Well, what happened was Bill Blinn, who has always been my godfather in so many ways. He was our head writer, executive producer, and the crew was so in love with me. At first, they were so challenged by me and annoyed with me, but then they got to where they loved me because I always had these ideas. I was prepared, and even if I didn't know how I wanted to shoot it, I had ideas about camera moves, and I challenged the DP in ways that he had not been challenged in, I don't think, his whole career. So the crew was like, after I was directing for all these directors who didn't understand dance, the crew was like, we want Debbie. And then Bill was like, yeah, let's do Debbie. So they gave me my first episode, and I remember it. It's called Lisa's Song. It was about a ghost that that was in the school that Valerie's character was seeing in the image in the mirror. And it was incredible. And it was the first time the crew ever wrapped early. I mean, one day we wrapped at like 4 o'clock. They were like, yeah. But we weren't rushing. I just knew what I wanted. I always knew what I wanted. As a director, that's still, I think, one of the things that people like about me a lot.
As a fellow actor, was it smooth for the other actors for you to be directing them?
Yeah, the actors were used to me directing them in all the production numbers, so it was nothing new, and they certainly knew my ability. So, no, everybody was rooting for me, and then it turned out to, Debbie, how many do you want to direct? You can direct as many as you want. So the choreography did pay off, and my agent wasn't right. I was right. He was wrong.
So you were the first, if not, I think the first African-American woman to direct primetime television, scripted television. Were you aware of that then? That's pretty groundbreaking.
I'm not aware of it now. Is that true? I don't even know that.
That's what my notes say, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's amazing, and I'm proud to have that title.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did
now that you know, I mean...
Now that I know.
I'm surprised you don't, actually, because, yeah.
Well, you know what? I've been on that train that's still moving forward, that I don't get to rest on laurels. I don't get to look at anything. I mean, we don't know. Just like, hey, when my sister, Felicia Rashad, won the Tony Award for Best Actress, we didn't know she was the first African-American woman to win that award. We were sure that Ruby Dee had won it. But, hey, I'll take that little star on my forehead. I like that. That's nice.
Well, you told me about growing up in Houston that, there was discrimination there even in terms of getting, accepted to a ballet academy or a dance academy.
Yeah.
How did you find it when you were doing Fame in terms of women, especially women of color, having those kind of leadership roles, directing and, choreographing and things like that?
I found it still to be very tough. And still. When I started directing Fame, I remember my first day wondering, what was I going to wear? Did I need to, man up and wear some macho-looking clothes? Or, will they pay attention to me? And, I ended up wearing my pink overalls, some lace socks, my perfume, and they loved me because not that I'm a woman or anything, but because I came prepared as a director. I went to work as a director, not as a black woman, not as a woman, but as a director. But often you don't get looked at like that. I mean, there's so many... I went on interviews for so many incredible movies because everyone was so impressed by my work, and they just wouldn't hire me. And one time they stopped and said, you know what? You're the best one for this, but we're not going to hire you because you're a woman. And I went, okay, thanks, but I'm not going to cut off the breast, so I'll just have to deal with it. And, I would think that my talent, an ability would fill a quota. I'm black and I'm a woman. But I think because I come out of that world of theater and come out of the world of social and human injustice, I have no fear. I really don't have any fear. And that might be off-putting to people, that I can come in and express myself clearly, that I can say this is how I want to do it. And it's not looked at as great. Some people go, ooh, she's a bit much, or maybe we can't handle her, or I don't know. Sometimes I think it's not worked in my favor, but in the long run, at the end of the day, I'm still here and I'm doing so many great shows now and so many things. It's all good.
Well, I was going to ask you about, if you experienced discrimination and sexism, and what you said is like it was pretty blunt, it sounds like.
It was blatant and blunt. I mean, I remember the day when, I won't say his name, grabbed my butt. And I was choreographing. He was the director. Mm-hmm. And he grabbed my butt, and I was trying to explain to him how I designed it for the camera. And he grabbed me on the ass. He said, don't you worry your little self about the camera. I collared him. I collared his son of a bitch. And I said, you know what? You, first of all, take your hand off of my...
Miss, how would you feel if you are hard at work and someone, a colleague, feel that they get to handle your body the best way they see fit without permission? Let me know, how would you handle a situation like that?
Ever touch me like that again. If you don't get the shots out of my head, you're going to be standing here all day trying to figure it out, and you will never direct again. Now what? Well, honey, next thing you know, I was calling, he said, Debbie, I was calling action, cut. Oh, he learned his lesson. I did not wait for anybody's trial or go to court. I straightened his ass out right then. But, that comes to haunt you. Then they may say, oh, she's tough.
But you became co-executive producer. Was that around that time?
No, that incident happened early on when I started on Fame. And I never did go and cry to the executive. I didn't cry to anyone. I took care of it. Gangsta.
Yeah. So what were your added responsibilities as a co-executive producer?
Well, that was incredible. Becoming co-executive producer was because I was able to manage people. I was able to communicate, keep things moving on time, oversee what was happening in scripts and production. I was doing all the things I'd always done, but I was now being credited as a producer.
So the show ran about 5 years?
It was actually 6.
And it started on network and became syndicated, didn't it?
Yes, it was the first show to be first-run syndication.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it end? Did it just run its course? Or?
It ran its course in 6 years. It ran its course. I mean, we went through so many things. I mean, I was married. I got divorced. I had a child. I left the show for a while to go work with Bob Fosse when I was so angry with them for trying to fire my dance company because they wanted to be paid properly. At the end of the day, it was all more positive than not. We changed the world's image of what the arts really are and what they take to succeed in. We created performing arts schools around the world. I mean, in South Africa, places like so far away that you don't even think. We had an impact that is still a footprint that is still, collecting dust from its stamp.
Well, Fame definitely lives on. In 2003, there was a reality show based on Fame.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Well, that was fun. MGM called me and said, Debbie, we got this idea. And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, you're really the face of Fame. I said, I can be, in a way. I think Lydia and Leroy were the most popular characters. Everyone was well known, but they were the two. Mm-hmm. So they asked me to be the Earth Mother, to guide these young 20 or so contestants through this triple threat. And I said yes, and it was fun. It's interesting. We did the first show And the head of the network called and said, "That's the best opening number I've ever seen. I want that same number every week." I said, "Well, no, I can do something else." She said, "No, Debbie, I mean it. I want that same number every week." And it became our theme. It was work. It was a Kumo D song, work like a doctor. When I rock the mic, you got to like the way I operate. Everything happens.
And you had a role in the newer feature film of Fame.
Yes.
Did you play the same character?
In my mind, I did. I ignored what they said, that my name was something else. I said, "Child, what are y'all tripping about? This is Lydia Grant. That's why you came to me." That's why I said yes, because I felt it was homage to the old and the new, and Lydia Grant was a real part, So whatever her name was, I said, "It's Lydia Grant, but she's married now."
The response to the film was nowhere near to the original. What do you think? What's your take on it?
Well, it wasn't a surprise. We were hopeful about it, and we tried to promote it, but they never went edgy enough. And they were still trying so much to pay homage to the original. They should have just done an original, totally different story. They were still telling the story that the movie told, but they were splitting up characters. The Coco character was split up between two characters. A young girl that was an actress and a young girl that was a singer. So she ended up in somebody's trailer having to take her clothes off, but they never even had her go naked. It wasn't allowed. They wanted a different rating. I think they, honestly, if I had been creatively a voice on that movie, I would have said, let's just go to the next story. Right now, there's so much we're dealing with. Not just a kid committing suicide, but there's AIDS. There's so much going on right now.
So why do you think, 3 decades later, Fame still resonates with people?
I think Fame still resonates 3 decades later because what we did was so pure and it was honest.
Let me know in the comments, what do you feel is the reason why the TV show Fame still resonates with people?
It was really honest, and those stories were always so compelling. The dancing and the singing were just revelatory to the audiences. They hadn't seen anything like that week to week to week. I think we were such an inspiration. And it's what I'm finding, because I've opened the Debbie Allen Dance Academy, and I have women who are bringing their kids to me because they watched me on Fame, and they want their kids to have some of that. What is that world of discipline, of dedication, of passion, of, self-exploration? That's what Fame gave the audiences, and they welcomed us into their living room, and we belong to them. So right now, I'm telling you right now, if I go to New York City right now and walk the streets, invariably there'll be 2 or 3 women running out of a deli. There'll be a man on the street that will give me an umbrella or put his coat down for me to walk across a puddle of mud. And it's because Fame left them with that kind of heart. It made them think that they could do something in the world that maybe they were told they couldn't do. It gave people that sense of accomplishment, that it was possible.
And more than that, didn't it influence arts programs in schools all over?
We create,
and still does?
Well, yeah. I said this
Yeah.
earlier. We created performing arts schools all around the world. And it's partly why I opened the Debbie Allen Dance Academy. Because for years, everyone said, "Miss Allen, where's your school? I want to bring my child. Where's your school?" And I'm like, So finally, I did it.
So you became a producer and director of A Different World, which was a spin-off of which Cosby Show? The Cosby Show?
The Different World was a spinoff of The Bill Cosby Show.
The Bill Cosby Show. Okay. And how did you come to that show?
Well, I graduated from Howard University. I had already done so much work as a director. I was directing Family Ties. I was doing Quantum Leap. I was doing so many different things. And I was just being invited by Gary David Goldberg to become one of the main directors on Family Ties, when I got a call from Bill Cosby. There were problems on the show Different World. Those of us that were watching it that knew historically black colleges could see it, but there were problems going on behind the scenes and on the product itself. And he said, you know, I want you to go in there, dust your broom, and clean out anybody that you want to go. He gave me full authority to fire anyone, hire whoever I wanted, make the show
Show A Different World. Tell me, from the first season to all the other seasons after that, we know of the people that actually left and the people that stayed. Do you think Debbie Allen did a great job getting rid of those certain people, or do you feel that some of the people from season 1 should have stayed to season 2 and 3 and so forth and so on? Let me know in the comments.
relevant. Get in there, Debbie. And then I sat down with Tom Werner, Marcy Carsey, and Karen Mondebach, and they said, yeah, we really do want you to come in. So I said, give me every episode. And they said, you want to see every? I said, absolutely. I want to see everything you've done, so I know what the game plan is. So I went in. I didn't want to fire anybody. I didn't fire anybody. I didn't even want it. I didn't take a credit as executive producer. I would just be producer, director. And I thought I would even bring in some other directors. And then Bill said, no, you're directing every episode. I said, really? He said, yes, we got to get it right. So for almost 2 years, maybe, I directed every episode. It was his edict. That was his edict. But I went in there and rustled up the writing team and shook up the actors and added people and got them to talking to one another, because that's what I had learned from Gary David Goldberg. The genius of Family Ties was they would have a read through and open the floor and let the actors say how they felt, not just do what we tell you, we're the writers and you do what we say. So I was trying to find that commonality, because a sitcom that multiple camera is as much the closest medium you're going to get between theater and film, because you have a live audience, which becomes a character. Because when they laugh, you got to hold. You can't just keep plowing. You got to stop. And it's theater and it's film. So I went in there and wow, it was tough. But I went in there and got us to doing stories that were relevant, free the writers, free the actors, got in a lot of trouble, was always called into the principal's, what I call the principal's office, always getting called into the principal's office. But we changed that show. That show became relevant.
Let's talk some more after we change.
Debbie Allen interview, part 1 of 2. Now let me know exactly what you think about the first part of this interview in the comments below.